Sit you down, darling. No, she's got to sit down.
Oh, yes, isn't it?
Hurrah.
Can you hear us?
I'm starting.
Can you hear what we're saying?
Can you hear what we're saying? Hurrah.
The mics are working.
What we wanted to do, Judy and I, when we agreed to do this, is try and get as many questions from people who are going to be here tonight and people who are not here tonight, Twitter, and there's a load of questions coming on the net. And so we're going to start the evening by getting the question that 1/4 of the people who wanted to ask questions asked, so we can get it out of the way. And I bet you can guess what it is, can't you? Okay, why did you kill off Kate, the lesbian character in Last Tango in Paris, and Last Tango in Halifax, and do you regret that?
Story. We started plotting series 3, and we had some fantastic stories. But it's like any new series of an ongoing series. You can't rest on your laurels. You can't just think, oh, we'll just churn out a bit more. You've got to have a huge reason for going again. You've got to be telling a really big new story. And whilst we did have that really big story with Derek finding out that he'd got this long-lost Rupert Graves son. But it felt that halfway through the series that it flagged. It needed something new, it needed something big, it needed something that would engage the audience. And that's the route we chose to go down. And I had no idea how big the reaction would be. And it was huge.
Wasn't it?
And yeah, I do regret it, actually. I've had people going on at me about it quite a lot.
Sorry, love.
So
When you say
I wish we'd been more inventive. I wish we'd been clever. I wish we'd had time to be more inventive, but we didn't. You know, I had to turn those scripts around really quite quickly. And I work very closely, as you know, with Nicola Schindler and Karen Lewis.
That's who we is.
Yes.
Right.
When I'm doing, and Cam, my storyliner. So we have meetings, we discuss things, we discuss stories. And Nicola particularly felt very strongly that it was the right way to go. And I'm always very guided by Nicola. I rely on her, I trust her instincts. And she was very clear that it was the right way to go. So I went along with it. And, you know, it was a great story. It was a huge story. It's a fantastic story. And it was a big story for Caroline and Celia. And, of course, they're the leads. They're the important ones. So it informed a new direction for our lead characters. But I am sad we've lost Kate. When I contemplate writing a 4th series, which I am doing at the moment, I'm sad she's not part of the mix. But the fact that she isn't there now, however, opens up whole new...
You're contemplating, or you're writing at the moment?
I'm working on the storylines at the moment. I haven't actually... I opened a new page in Final Draft this morning to start writing the first scene, and I realised the stories weren't ready yet because I didn't get beyond the first line, which was Caroline saying a handbag.
So that's plagiarism.
So there you go.
So will you write all these stories and then take them to the committee? And pump
No,
them?
the committee, me and Nicola and Karen and Cam, meet, and I come in with a number of ideas, never enough, and we'll just discuss them and talk about them and throw them around, and then me and Cam go away and write our own version of what we've talked about, and eventually it becomes a document that looks a bit like a storyline. And then I break it down into a scene breakdown, which becomes a very long document. It's usually about 10 pages long, and it's a scene by scene. It's very detailed.
So you're making the plot watertight before you start what they're going to say?
Oh, yeah. Complete. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll write a really detailed document with every scene, every thought process, every...
And does the writing... Sorry about this, Jude. But does the writing process ever change that? Do you ever find the character or yourself going, and you go, oh my God, I never thought of that?
No, I mean, the compulsion to write dialogue straight away. Like today, I was just sat down, I'm going to write some dialogue. And then actually I thought, I don't know what to put because the stories aren't there. So you always want to make your characters speak, but until you've thought through all those processes. And I couldn't write today because I knew what Caroline's doing, I know what Celia's doing, but I don't quite know what Gillian's doing yet. And I thought I can't start writing for one character till I know what all the other characters are doing. Because...
That's not fair.
Well, no, it's just that any one scene, if you're writing about Caroline, you still need to know what Gillian's doing, because what Gillian's doing might inform what Caroline says, because Caroline might know what Gillian's doing.
So, linking that back to a bit of history and your early body of work, where did you learn that routine, that process?
It was probably... I think it's instinctive. I think it's something that you kind of know to do. It comes back to a kind of authenticity, I think, whereby I can't start writing for a character till I know what their name is. And then I can't start writing for a character till I know what kind of music they like and what clothes they wear. And it comes back to, until you've built that character up really in a huge amount of detail, you really don't know how they're going to speak. And sometimes characters come absolutely fully fledged. Catherine Carewood did. Ruth did in Unforgiven. But sometimes, you have to populate your dramas with people who don't come fully fledged. You have to invent them. You have to work out who they are and why they're where they are in life and all those kind of
would
things.
you say that you're playing with your teddy bears and making up stories with your sister, a local history, helped that, nurtured that?
Yeah, I mean, me and Diane used to write scripts for each other at night and read them out. Well, all day I used to write mine. And then
How old were you when this was going on?
Probably about 7 or 8.
So you wrote plays
Yeah.
for, if I've got this right, for you to play mum and for Diane to play dad?
No.
The other way around?
No, we didn't play mum and dad. You don't want your mum and dad in your stories, do you? No, these were people we wanted to be. These were fabulous.
Where did the teddy bears come into it?
Oh no, we used to write Tim and John, the teddy bears. We used to write. We used to do cartoon strips, and there was a family based around the teddy bears. That's right. That's where we
Dad
played
and
mum and dad.
comes.
Oh, that was much
I
earlier.
have done my research.
That was like when we were about 3.
Ah, that early. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I think so.
And when you went to Trinity Primary School, local
Triangle.
connection, Triangle,
Yeah.
was there any teacher there that inspired you? That nurtured you?
We had really good
Because
teachers.
she might be sitting here.
Mr. Sunderland.
Mr. Sunderland! Oh, you stand up, Mr. Sunderland!
Is he?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I thought it was turning into This Is Your Life.
I've got the red book!
We had really good teachers at Triangle. There was Mr. Gaskell, who was the headmaster, and I always really liked him. And Mr. Sunderland, who was a brilliant teacher, who was very... he was just really encouraging. I remember him often saying to children, "Oh, you're brilliant, you're really clever, you're really good at this is fantastic," and really being genuinely excited about what children could do and what, it was a wonderful teacher.
And did you get that early thrill that made you go, yes, my instincts are right, I can do this?
Yeah.
Were you aware? Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
I think when you have something innate, I think there comes a point when you need outside approval. You need somebody to say, yeah, it's not just you being egocentric. You are.
I think
so
so.
it is reaching somewhere.
I think so. I've always been a perfectionist, and I've always needed other people to tell me I'm good at things in order to validate myself. But I've always had an inner... I'm not the most confident person in the world ever. I'm really, very quite awkward socially and that kind of thing. But I've always been able to draw and I've always been able to write. And nobody will ever persuade me that I can't do either of those things. But it's still nice to be told, you still need a pat on the back all the time.
And did that continue with secondary, Southey High?
Sober.
I got told off for that.
Stand corrected. Just keeping it local.
Yeah. I really enjoyed being at school, and it was fun, and I liked it. I don't think... There were a couple of teachers at Sober Bridge who were brilliant, but it wasn't... I suppose it's just not the same as being at a small local village school where it's much more personal, I suppose. But I enjoyed being at... we had some I had some good history teachers at secondary school, and a couple of really good English teachers, and I had one good art teacher.
That's not bad.
No,
That's not a bad
but I did
idea.
enjoy school. I really enjoyed being at secondary school. I was a bit of a nerd, I think.
When Georgie and I were discussing what we were going to ask you, or not, he was very interested to know what your play that you took to Edinburgh Festival was.
What is this?
Hanging On.
Is that what it's called? Tell me about that.
I wrote it at the end of my first year at York. At York, the English degree was in 9 parts. It was very formal. It was called English and Related Literature, and it was very academic. But one of the 9 parts you could do was an independent paper, and usually you would write about a genre or a particular writer. And I asked if I could write a play, and nobody had ever asked to do that before. So it was a very new thing to ask to do. And they said, you can write a play. The Board of Studies went away and thought about it, and they said, you can write a play, but we'll only decide when you've written it and we've read it if it is worthy of being one part of your degree, and if it isn't, you'll have to go away and do something else.
And?
So I wrote the play, and I had to stage it as well. So I'd already written the play when I asked. And I knew I was going to stage it
Just because
anyway.
you wanted to? Just...
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And I had to put on a stage version of it. And I did, and it was great fun. And the lead was played by the daughter of Sir Donald Woolfit, Gabriel Woolfit.
Did you direct it?
Yeah.
Cool.
And so they came and examined it, 2 doctors, professors, whatever. And they decided it wasn't only worthy of academic merit. They gave me a first for it. So that was...
Come on.
That was the first time I actually thought of myself as a writer, a proper writer, even though I'd been writing since I was, 3. That was the first time I thought, I know I can do this, and
How
now
long
other
was it?
people can. It was called Hanging On, and it was about a student. It was about a friend of mine called Robin, who was reading computer studies at York, and he got a massive sponsorship with British Telecom. We were there on our student grant of, like £300 a term, and he was getting £9,000 a year from British Telecom because he was sponsored by them to be there. But they were very rigorous. They wanted a lot back for their £9,000 a year. And he just became a hippie and a dropout, which I thought was really cool. So I wrote a play about him dropping out, basically, and I turned him into a woman. So the main character was called Jane Hall, in fact. So it was an early version of Jane Hall. But it was a completely different story. It was just the same name, Jane Hall.
How many characters are in this play?
I think there were about 9.
And then you took it to the Edinburgh
We
Festival?
took it to Edinburgh. We got a really bad review in the Scots.
Did you?
Yeah.
We've all got one of
Yeah.
them. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
but it was great fun. It was a real, it's like all
When was
things.
the last time you looked at it?
What, the play?
Yeah.
I don't think I've even got a copy of it anymore.
Oh, my God.
Because it's, it's like a 30-year-old document. They don't exist anymore today.
How amazing.
Find those actors that were in it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still friends with
Oh, wow.
some of them. In fact, one of them's my eldest boy's godfather.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, Edinburgh Festival, you
Yeah.
pick up an agent.
Oh, hang on. Could we just have the arson story since I've done this research?
Arson.
Arson in
chronological.
Halifax, I'm told.
Arson.
Fire engines.
Just keeping it local.
I've got it on my phone, but I don't want to turn it on.
Was this setting the moors on fire?
It's Norland Moors.
Nolan Moor.
Tells about-
That wasn't my fault.
Somebody might come out and disagree in a minute, mightn't they?
Right. No, me and Diane, we used to be mates with these lads who lived on this farm where they had caravans up on Nolan Moor. And that was the farm that I used to base the story on in Happy Valley, Series 1.
Oh, right. Oh, well.
They had you back.
Yeah.
No.
And fire engines, and you were grounded for life, I was told. It was great. Obviously not, but,
I wasn't. One of the lads who we were playing with was grounded and was in trouble for a bit. I think me and Dan just ran off and pretended we weren't really involved. It was quite dramatic at the time. Blimey, what have you been doing? Your research?
Talking to your sister.
Keeping it in family.
So, go on. We're up to...
We've got an agent from Edinburgh Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your first job with the Archers.
Yeah.
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 How many episodes?
Blimey, I can't remember. I think I wrote it for about 2 years. And you wrote 5 episodes. You wrote a week's worth of scripts, so that's 5 episodes. So I wrote quite a good few, but I've no idea how many.
And there was a lovely article I read that you got your agent and you had sent in a précis of an episode for the Archers, on the back of which you binned off your job as a bus driver and then was destitute. Because actually you hadn't got confirmation that you'd got a job.
Destitute is a bit strong.
Okay, all right.
I mean, you can't really be destitute if you've got no money to start with, can you? So,
okay.
No, I'd gone to London because I wanted to be a writer, and I was under the impression that was the thing to do if you wanted to be a writer in those days, 300 years ago, in 1980, whenever it was, 6. And I managed to get a room in a house, shared house full of ex-students, graduates who'd gone to London in a similar manner. And one of the people I said, if you could earn money driving buses. So I trained to be a bus driver, which took 2 weeks.
Right.
2 weeks before they let you in charge of a bus?
Yeah. No driving licence. No, that's... No, you had to have had a driving licence for 3 years, and then it does actually take 14 days to train to drive. Right.
Were you good at it? I mean,
yeah. I was good at driving the buses. I didn't like the customers. They were a nuisance.
were they homos?
What? Yeah, one-man operators. Yeah. You learned on a route master.
And are you still a petrol head?
Yeah.
What do you drive now, Sally?
At the moment, I'm driving. I forgot what it's called. It begins with an H. Hyundai.
Oh yeah.
But that's only because my Bentley's been smashed up.
And how did your Bentley get smashed up, Sally?
I was coming off the M1. This is 2 weeks ago.
Oh no.
I was coming off the M1.
Is it the same as that heap of...
You don't like George and Bentley's. George is really funny. He's got to drive a Bentley in Happy Valley, everyone. And he hates it. He's going, I hate this fucking car. I had to shoot last year. A new director, never directed before. And I'm in a car with George Costigan. When you're shooting scenes in a car, you might not realise this, but you see somebody driving a car on telly, and the car is actually packed with about 15 people. There's me in the back, a director looking at my monitor like this. There's the sound person sitting behind George. George is in the driving seat, obviously, because we're filming him. And then there's Ivan, the DOP cameraman, sitting next to George with the camera like this. So the car is actually packed.
And you're not on a low loader?
No.
Oh, right. That's like a trolley.
So inside this Bentley, it was a Continental GT, wasn't it? And they're actually quite tiny inside. And,
Quite tiny? Honestly, this is the biggest heap of tripe I've ever been anywhere near.
So
when it said in the script, when I got the script, it said he drives a Bentley. I saw one of those big armchair cars, because the guy's 60, and I thought, no, I get this kind of like sex machine thing that you can't see out of, that never stops beeping. Go on, sorry. Beep, 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 beep.
So there's Ivan with the camera, with his legs up on the dashboard to squash himself in. There's me in the back thinking, I hope George isn't going to start shouting again. And there's David, the sound man, sat next to me. And George is going, I hate this fucking car, it keeps beeping at me. And then we had to do this scene about 4 times like you normally do. And you got out, didn't you? So I'm not driving it back. Somebody else can drive it back. Because you have to drive it back to where you start from to come back each time.
When we got to series 2, I said to her, there's a shock in series 2 that is that Never sold the Bentley. He bought a larder. She wouldn't
Put
have
him
it.
on a bike.
Yeah. Go on, tell us about Jane Hall and the bus driver thing. What did you do? Chronicle your own experiences?
Slightly. It was very different from what I wanted it to be, Jane Hall, because I wanted it to be about a young woman who wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Yeah. And it was meant...
Have you seen it?
Yes.
Oh, no. I haven't.
Have you not?
No, you can't.
It's not very good.
Download it.
It is quite good, but it didn't get an audience. And anyway, it was about this young woman who wanted to be a stand-up comedian. So she goes up to London after university, gets a job driving buses because she hasn't got anything else to do. And ITV kind of chickened out of the stand-up comedian bit, so we had to pull all the bits where she was doing stand-up comedy routines out of it. So it ended up being about a young girl who goes to be a bus driver. So it wasn't that. It was never as funny as it should have been. It was never as complex as it should have been.
So do you learn from that about fighting which battles you have to fight in some way to protect the material?
Yeah.
Because presumably it's your first telly, and you're...
Oh, that wasn't my first telly. That was after the Braithwaites.
Oh, that was after... Oh, no, I beg your pardon. Okay. I'm going to get my chronology out now, so I don't do that again.
No, it was... of course you learn when things go wrong. I mean, it didn't get a great audience, and it didn't get good reviews. It got really poor reviews. It was quite bruising. But, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
But on that thought, Georgie, you did a wonderful body of work with the soaps. You went on to Corrie, Entail, The Archers, and then ultimately Children's Ward. Was it through that you were learning these things that Georgie was asking about and creating your own path? Because it was quite...
I mean, the great thing about Granada then, once I started working on... I got invited to work at Granada on Families. I don't know if you remember that. It was an afternoon soap. And I wanted to write Children's Ward. That's what I really wanted to do. I wanted to write Corrie, and I wanted to write Children's Ward. And I got invited, on the strength of having written 6 really shit episodes of Emmerdale, I got invited to write for Families. And once I got into that world of Granada, there were massive opportunities there. There were some fantastic people there then. Yeah. There was people like Russell Davies, Kay Mellor, Frank Cottrell Boyce, Paul Abbott. You know, there was some brilliant... Series 4 of Children's Ward was written by Kay, Paul, me and Russell. Do you remember?
Well, I was telling Georgie before, his jaw was dropping, because I came into Children's Ward in the 2nd series, and I had a wonderful conversation. I sort of phoned up Granada, and I said, excuse me, I'm trying to find somebody in the office that knows there's something about this series called Children's Ward, and there was a gasp at the other end. And I said, what? And I said, well, I don't know much about this character, and I'm supposed to be playing her, and there was this and I said, and he said, it's a fantastic character, it's Sister Mitchell and I wrote it. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I don't know anything. Who are you? He said, I'm Paul Abbott, I created it. And it was sort of, you know, and I was telling you, Paul Abbott and Kay Mellor were brought together by David Liddermont, the producer.
Brilliant.
Your good self, Jan McAvery, John Chambers. I mean, the sort of the icons of British television were all... Because I remember on Braithwaites, Amanda Redmond taking me aside saying, how do you know Sally? And I said, well, I've been working with her on Children's Ward. Children's Ward? What's that? I said, well, it's a children's drama. Oh, I said, do you know who writes for children?
No, it was amazing. Yeah. I mean, Granada was amazing at the time because you could... You know, they had these schemes where they would have people shadowing other writers. That's what I came in to do. I came in to shadow people like Peter Worley on Families. Yeah. And Peter was this fantastic, huge...
What does shadowing a writer entail?
Basically, they paid you to write the same script that someone like Peter Worley was writing. So the episode that Peter Worley wrote would go on screen, but you'd have had a crack at writing exactly the same episode. So you'd have been given the same storyline. And it was what you did with it.
And then who judged that?
Caroline Reynolds. I mean, her and David Liddermont were brilliant at the time. They had this fantastic hothouse, really, for getting new writers
Obviously.
in. Russell, you know, was all part of that at the same time as I was. Seeing what they could do, and then they'd give you jobs. They'd give you jobs on Families. There were loads of other series around at the time. You probably haven't heard of a lot of them, but they were, you know, it was...
Spring Hill was
good paid work.
One.
Spring Hill, Revelations. There was one called Mario's that never made it onto screen, but it was very good. And then eventually got asked to write Children's Ward, which was what I'd always wanted. And then eventually Coronation Street, which was the thing.
Has this structure gone?
Yes. Yeah. Well, Granada's gone, hasn't it? You know.
Well, yeah, but isn't it...
No, I mean, very few people do it. I mean, Red is great now. I mean, Nicholas Schindler is getting to that stage with Red where she's big enough to take risks with new writers. But the BBC have, is it called the Writers'
Room?
The Writers' Room. And they do encourage people, they give people feedback, but it's not the same. It's not like you're actually working on a real show. Right. It was an extraordinary time to be a newcomer, and it was where you were really involved in proper shows. You were able to sit in meetings with people like, as I say, Peter Warlick, Stephen Mallatrat, you know, those really big names that were out in Coronation Street, and just listen to them develop stories. It was such a privilege to be there, to hear how stories are developed, and stories are the biggest thing in the world. You know, most writers of a certain calibre can write characters easily, they can write dialogue. It's like being able to draw, to be able to write dialogue, it's just something you can do. It's just something some people can do, and it's odd because we all speak it, but not all of us can actually write it in a way that makes it sound real. But the biggest, hardest thing is story, coming up with story. And that's where I really learned that story is hard. It's hard to come up with, and it requires a lot of thought, it requires a lot of effort. And to sit and listen to these people who are so good at it, so clever at coming up with
This is in a writers' conference?
Yeah, in storyline conferences for families first. And then finally I was asked to write Coronation Street, I think in 1994. And I was terrified. I went into this room full of 15 men, apart from Adele Rose and Tria Smolacombe, and it was frightening. I didn't speak for about 3 years. Because
But you did write?
Oh, I could write better than any of them, but I couldn't speak.
So, out of this, and you're talking about stories and ideas, your first original piece was At Home with the Braithwaites.
Yes, and that was commissioned by...
So I was going to say, did you take the idea to somebody? Or?
Yeah,
Right,
because they'd created this environment where you could be very... You know, they were very encouraging, they were very open, they were very excited about new things. And as well as David Liddman and Karen Reynolds, Tony Wood was there then as well. Mm-hmm. You remember Tony?
Yeah, I remember.
And he commissioned the Braithwaites first as a half-hour sitcom.
Ah.
So I wrote a half-hour sitcom
6
version.
episodes?
No, just the first episode.
Right.
Oh, well, actually, some of the best advice I was ever given was by Tony when I wrote that. And he said, don't write the first episode, write the third episode. Which was brilliant advice, because you hit the ground running, you're right in there, you're not setting it up, you're not explaining who everybody is, you're just getting straight on with the story. So I wrote the third episode. And then Tony left, I think, and Carolyn picked up all his portfolio of things he'd left. And she recommissioned it as an hour-long drama. And because it had been a sitcom, it became this new thing that was just beginning to form then, which was the comedy drama. And I think, what's his name, had started to write Cold Feet by then. I forgot his name. Embarrassing.
I've forgotten his name.
Mike, is it Mike?
Mike Bullen, that's right.
Yeah.
And so it was very much at the start of that genre that became comedy drama.
I mean, the thing I loved about At Home, apart from the lovely characters, was the look of it. Whose idea was that? That kind of zany music and the fast changes of image and the zappiness of it.
I think it was Robin Shepherd, the first director, who came on board.
Because that was very groundbreaking, I remember. I remember sitting in the first screening of it for the crew.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was Robin. She
Right,
brought all that to it. It was fantastic.
But inspired by
Well, she
your
got
words.
the script, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was... no, it was. I was really pleased when I saw what it was going to look like. I mean, there were some things I wasn't pleased about, but, you know, you've got to take the rough with the smooth. But on the whole, it did look very new, and I think people still copy it now.
And
Actually.
as a writer that's got your first original piece up and running, do doors start opening for you or not? Or do you still have to keep banging on people's doors?
It's kind of a bit of both. I think I was really lucky with the Braithwaites. It was a huge hit, and it went to 4 series. And I thought it was going to be like that all the time from then on.
Did you write every word of all 4 series?
No, I wrote the first 3, and then I wrote the first episode of series 4.
And what's that feel like, handing it over to other writers?
It's horrible.
Is it?
It's really bad, yeah. I hate it.
Because?
The only time I haven't hated it is when Amelia Bullmore wrote Scott and Bailey, because she's brilliant. She just got it. I never had to touch Amelia's scripts. They were better than mine, I think.
I bumped into Amelia at the Royal Exchange, and she told me that I was in the next series of Scott and Bailey. And she looked at me and she said, "I've just handed my script over to Sally." And I went, "You'll be great." And she went, "How can you say that?" And I said, "Because you're sharp."
Yeah, she's sharp. She's very clever. But often you hand over to writers and it's really hard because they've got the passion and they really want to get it right, but it's just very, very different. And I've been, a couple of times I've had to rewrite scripts completely, and that's a horrible thing to do to another writer.
Yeah.
But you just have to. The show is the thing. The show is the important thing. And the audience is the important thing.
Did you get any choice in which writers you handed on the 4th series to, or they presented to you?
No, because I kind of walked off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a bit of a strop.
Why did you? I mean...
I can't remember, George. I was being worked really hard because it was so successful and I kind of wasn't used to it. And I wanted to go off and do other things. I'd got Sparkhouse commissioned then by the BBC. And that was the first time I worked with Nicola at Red.
Right.
And Carolyn was just pushing me for more and more and more Braithwaite because it was so successful. And I wanted to do other things. I wanted to get in with the BBC as well as ITV.
So have you kind of sold it over? You now, if you've done 3 series, big success, la la la, Caroline's going, give us more, give us more. Are you now not in a position where you can go, I'm not doing any more Braithwaites?
I am now. I wasn't then.
Yes.
I mean, it was very different then.
So they owned. So what I mean is, they owned it.
Yeah.
So they could go and find other writers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was very different then. I mean, like now I'm an executive producer on all my shows, which means I have a huge amount of clout. Then I wasn't even shown the rushes. On the Braithwaites, I never even saw the rushes. I mean, I would be presented with a finished episode, and if I didn't like it, I could go and fuck off, which really upset me. This is why I want, why I'm so happy that I'm directing now is I've obviously had this need all along to be much more involved in my work, and I just wasn't. I felt like
just in control of it,
Well, it's not about being in control. I don't know why, as a writer, you're not the first resource for the production. When people want to talk about what the production is going to be, why the writer isn't the first resource.
It is in theatre.
It is now more in television. But then when I did the Braithwaites, I just wasn't included. I wasn't asked anything. I was persuaded not to visit the set even. I was told that when I visited the set, it was like the Queen visiting, and it upset everyone, which really annoyed me because it's not true. Actually, It was just a way of sort of divide and rule.
Were you ever approached during Children's Ward to do some producing? Because I mean, Russell did producing on it, Paul did producing on it. No. As a kind of a training.
I talked to Caroline. I wanted to be more involved, and I always had that urge to be more involved.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the confidence to do that.
So was there an epiphany when you realised that actually...
It was Kay Mellor. It was the influence of Kay Mellor. Kay, working with her on Children's Ward in the 1990s, she'd got Band of Gold commissioned and greenlit, which was just fantastic. And my big ambition had always been to write Coronation Street. And then when I started writing Coronation Street, which was wonderful, I saw Kay making 9 o'clock dramas, and so I shifted my ambitions. I wanted to create 9 o'clock dramas. And then just talking to Kay about wanting to direct, and she's a great enabler, Kay, and she said, well, just do it, And of course she just does it brilliantly.
And she has her own company.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that.
Okay.
I haven't got any business acumen.
How long do you do Corrie for?
5 years. 1994 to 1999.
How many episodes did you write?
57.
In 5 years?
Yeah.
10 a year?
Yeah.
Wow, they must have gone through some...
Well, I think there were about 15 of us. And I worked there when it went from three times a week to 4 times a week. And I left just before it started going to 5 times a week, which I was very pleased about. Because it did change the tenor of the show. I remember having meetings with the writers and the executives where the writers desperately tried to persuade the executives that it would change the nature of the whole show. It would become melodrama rather than drama because you have to get through so much storyline. And I think it has. I think Corrie's changed massively over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't actually watch it anymore. Not because I'm a snob, it's just not being involved anymore. I've watched Corrie since I was 6. And it was the biggest thing in my life. I wanted to write this show for so long. And then when I left, I couldn't stand. I wanted to leave, and it was my choice to leave. But I didn't want to know anymore because I couldn't stand it.
How much do you find yourself writing for particular actors in that?
In Corrie?
Yeah.
Oh, you could really. That was what was wonderful about Coronation Street compared to something like Emmerdale, where it was controlled by the script editors, and it was really, when I was there, this is a long time ago.
Emmerdale was?
Yeah.
So when you wrote an episode of Emmerdale, they give you the storyline and you fill in the dots?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still going on.
Yeah. Whereas on Corrie, they'd give you a
Well,
storyline.
it's an insult to a writer.
On Corrie, they gave you the storyline, and you thought, well, that's all very well and good, but I'm just not going to do that. And so you'd get a storyline that was all about Ken fucking Barlow. And you'd go, well, let's do that in 2 minutes, and then we'll make this tiny story about Raquel massive, you know. Because you were writing for actors who you liked and you knew could deliver, so, you know, if I knew I was writing something that Sarah was involved in, I'd just make it huge. Because she delivered, she always delivered. Yeah. And you knew, you know, that's sublime to ridiculous, those two characters. But, you know, in those different gradations, you knew if, you know, you could turn a tiny story into a big event if you chose to, within your episode. And if you had to cover a certain other story within that, and it was supposed to be big and you didn't like that character, you could make it tiny.
But somebody's got to read that script and go, all right, we will do that script.
Yeah, but if you make it funny and brilliant and wacky and whatever, and that's what was great about Coronation Street, then it you know, if it worked, if it was full of character and comedy, they loved it. I mean, it was a wonderful show to work on. Then you could watch an episode and guess who'd written it, and that was you know, this is when the name came on the end rather than the beginning. And I used to do that. I could see who'd written an episode because we were allowed so much freedom to turn it into our own thing, which was wonderful.
But as a writer who's also created two wonderful sons, what about Kay Miller, who uses her daughter as her producer, training them up to be your business acumen and run your company and your empire, and you write into your dotage?
Yeah, that's a good plan.
Okay. You heard it here first.
Sparkhouse, tell us about that.
Sparkhouse?
Yeah. Hang on. Who's seen Sparkhouse? Has everybody seen it? Am I right in saying this is your rewrite of Wuthering Heights?
It wasn't really.
Oh, all right.
We sort of marketed as that after I'd written it because we realised there were some similarities.
What, you wrote it as a completely original thing and then realised you'd subliminally...
Yeah,
it's a sort of modern retelling, isn't it?
Carol, the main character that Sarah Smart played, was this quite dark, vicious character who had things in common with Heathcliff, and it was it was a kind of love story. And we realised there were similarities, but the roles were reversed. And I think I mentioned that in an interview, and then it just went like it does, you know. You say one tiny thing, and then it becomes a headline.
Yeah.
And that segues on to the Brontes, doesn't it?
Talk about the Brontes. You're about to give us a 2-hour movie about the Brontes.
Yeah. I've written it, and we've started casting this week. I'm going to start filming it in May next year.
And have you been given access to local venues, sites? And
No, we're not going to film it in the parsonage. I wouldn't ask to. It's such a precious environment there.
But the outside?
But they've been very
studios.
They're very on side. The parsonage have been really supportive, and they've given us a lot of help and advice. We're not going to use the outside even because the outside is so different now to what it was then.
Okay.
The whole of Church Street is different up the side where the parsonage is because they built the Wade extension in the 1870s, and that just wasn't there when the Brontes lived there. So we're going to build our own.
Oh, brilliant! Right.
Growing up in Surrey Bridge.
Sorby.
Did it on purpose, see if you'd rise.
Sorby Bridge.
Are the Brontes like? Is this like a real passionate thing that you wanted to talk about somebody who grew up in not exactly, but
No,
pretty
not
similar.
really. It's just from being tiny, me and Diane were taken over to the parsonage. It was like part of your, somewhere you visited on a Sunday. And so,
Well, Sid, Rita, Sue and Bob too. They all
of
go
course it is.
tottering
Of
off
course
to...
it is. That's right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And so I've always known who the Bronte sisters were.
Right.
It's always been there as part of your own personal culture and your own personal knowledge about your own bit of the world. So I suppose it started like... And the novels, I love Wuthering Heights. I think it's an extraordinary novel. And then I just got more interested in them and their story. About 15 years ago, I was asked to write a drama for the BBC Radio 4. It was called Emily Bronte's Lover, and it was about some theory that she had a boyfriend, which I didn't really believe, but it allowed me to spend some time thinking about the Brontes.
Right.
And I did a massive amount of research then. And of course, Juliet Barker's book about them, I thought it's a brilliant read. It's such an exciting book to read, and that just got me much more interested in them. And it is extraordinary when you think about it. These three women who were all brilliant geniuses living in Yorkshire. And
are they your heroes?
I think they were all very heroic and admirable in their own separate ways.
Who's your?
I like best the writing that influences me most is probably Emily Bronte's poetry, as well as Wuthering Heights. But Anne Bronte I like. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is such an extraordinary novel, and it often gets overlooked. But it's just as it's a very realistic portrait of living with an alcoholic, and it's an extraordinary.
Where'd
book.
she got that from Bramwell, presumably?
Oh, it's a portrait of Bramwell.
Right. Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And that's why and it's partly why Anne isn't as well regarded as Emily and Charlotte is, because after she died, it should have been republished. It was a huge bestseller, and Charlotte wouldn't let it be republished because she thought it was coarse and vulgar, and she was very protective of her reputation and her sister's reputation, and she felt that it would be it would make them look coarse and vulgar and all these kind of things, and so it wasn't republished when it should have been, and it didn't get the attention it should have got then, and only now really in the last 30 years is it getting the attention it should have receive. And people are seeing that Anne Bronte is just as important as Emily and Charlotte.
You read everything? All of theirs, I mean.
No, I haven't.
Have you not? Is there masses of it?
I haven't read all the juvenilia. I've read some of it. I haven't read... I think I probably have read them all at some point in my life. Right. But
what I was heading towards was research. I mean, obviously you don't need to research Jane Austen, because this is that the closest we get to a self-portrait of you?
No, it wasn't a portrait of me at all, that, no.
Oh, all right. What is the closest we get to a self-portrait? Have you ever used yourself in any of your
I use myself in everything. I think everything I write is a self-portrait. I think everything any writer writes to some degree is a reflection of them.
Right.
All characters. Nevison, to some degree, is a portrait of me, I would think, with added bits.
Cars.
Do you write in an office?
Yeah, I've got an office at home.
And do you have a storyboard? Do you have boards? Do you pin up things? Do you have visual maps?
No, I don't. I've tried things like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a set routine?
No, I just get up. I get up really early, ideally, and I write. I write when I feel like it, fortunately. That's
so sometimes
most of
at
the
night?
time. Oh yeah, I write in the early hours often. I think if you can get up at 2 o'clock and write till 7 in the morning, you're going to get a huge amount done.
Just because it's quiet and no distraction, la la la.
Yeah.
So are you ever ill-disciplined? Or are you don't look, it doesn't feel like you would be?
I think I'm ill-disciplined all the time, actually. I only write when I feel like it, but as I say, fortunately, that's most of the time. So.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I don't have a regular routine. I've tried to. But it just doesn't work. You know, there's always something more exciting to do, like make a cheese sandwich. You know.
So how do you relax? Do you relax?
I don't think I do. I think I write to relax. It's I don't think I do relax really. I relax all the time.
Everything's right, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a workaholic, I think. So it's all the same. Work and relaxing is all one thing to me.
Yeah. So do you watch telly at all? Do you watch television?
Less and less. As a child, I used to watch telly obsessively. I just used to watch telly whenever I could, all the time. It was the only thing I did. It defined who I was, really, television.
Is there anything you wish you'd written?
Oh, yeah, all the time. No, not all the time. But the only things I do watch now are things I wish I'd written, like Nurse Jackie. I love Nurse Jackie. I think that's amazing.
Have you hooked into the new series?
No, I can't. I went off it halfway through series 5. Okay. I got a bit fed up. But I thought the first 3 series were just extraordinary. Brilliant television. Yeah. Modern Family, I think that's...
Yes.
You watch that and you think, I wish I'd written that.
Right. So, but they're American.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anything we can learn from the American TV format?
Interestingly, I think Modern Family and Nurse Jackie are pretty... They have quite an English sensibility, I think.
But they run for huge seasons. Would we do that in England?
We can't afford to.
Oh, right.
Why not?
Okay.
Because we haven't got the money. I think in America they've got a lot more money to spend, so they can have writers' rooms where they will employ 20 writers to sit in a room and come up with ideas. And all the writers won't actually end up writing scripts.
But you were saying that's already kind of happened and has gone from English.
Yeah.
Well, there's a series at the moment called Boy Meets Girl.
Yes,
that's come out.
That's very good. I like that.
I know, it's lovely. Yeah. Writer's Room. So it's beginning.
Did that come out of the writer's room?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So
it says on the blurb. I mean, at the end.
I think it's really good.
No, I was thinking about...
Did we want an interval?
I've no idea. What time is it?
Was it at 1:45 or was it
It's
at
what?
9? 10 minutes to 9.
10
Oh, it's
to
at 9,
that's
is it?
cool.
I do beg your pardon.
What time are we supposed to stop for the first half? I've no
9.
idea. Are we? Oh, all right. Because it seems to me that... Is it just money? Because what the Americans and HBO, particularly, seem to have said is, no, what television does really well is tell dead long stories, like The Sopranos, and Breaking Bad was extraordinary because the first four series were all one yarn. Now, wouldn't you like to work on that scale?
I would like.
You know, like
I would.
When
I think it's really exciting.
Researching this, I watched Mrs. Pritchard. Is it Mrs. Pritchard? Yeah, which I really enjoyed. But round about episode 4, I thought, oh, this is going to have to end in a minute.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to.
I know.
Why hasn't she got more time to write this? Why? I know what's going to happen now. Something's going to go wrong, and then it's all wrapped up.
Yeah. I think in America, as I said, they do have more money, so they can afford to make 13 episodes as a first series. Whereas we can only take a risk on doing 6. I think things are changing. I mean, something like Downton has 12 episodes now.
Yeah. It's almost the only thing, isn't it?
Probably. But I mean, things are getting more episodes now, and things are changing so massively in television now. You know, there's a lot more money coming into us from America now. There's a lot more people going over from here to America. But when I was writing things like Jane Hall and Mrs. Pritchard, you would never get more than a 6-part series to kick something off with. If it was successful, you could say, can we do 8 now? And we did that with The Braithwaites. But you would never get 12 episodes as a starting point. And it is financial. It was then, certainly.
Well...
But what about the bravery? I mean, I heard a terrible thing about... I know the guy that created New Tricks for the BBC. And that's run for what? How many series are they up to now? The last one
10.
is 10 series. He wasn't asked to go and meet any BBC personnel until something like the 6th series. He was not invited to go and have a meeting. Right, this is doing really well. What other ideas have you got?
Really?
I mean, that lack of bravery is just stunning and awful for a writer. I mean, he's gone to America now because, as you say, that's the only one that will take the risk. if you can say that 10 series of new tricks is not a risk.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as a writer, you've got to push and push and push. You know, you've got to keep knocking on doors and making people see you, and make a nuisance.
Are you still doing that? Do you feel as though that's what you're doing?
No, not now.
Right.
But for a long time, I felt that I had to. And this is somebody who's quite shy and wouldn't normally say boo to a goose, but when it came to that, I just really wanted to make television. I really wanted to write television. And then I was lucky enough to meet Nicola Schindler when I did Spark House.
I was going to say.
And we have such a good relationship, so I don't have to knock on doors. I just go straight to Nicola now, and she is...
How many more people are there like her?
None.
Oh, right.
She's unique, Nicola. She's brilliant. I mean, there are other good executives out there, but she is pretty unique. She's got such relentless, brilliant energy. She's so passionate about making new, exciting, interesting television. She really isn't about bums on seats and creating same old, same old. She really wants to push the boundaries all the time. That's why when, your first question about Kate, a third series of Last Tango, we could have just been very complacent about it and just churned out a bit more of the same thing, but she didn't want to. She wanted to do something that would surprise people and show them something new and, make people talk about it, I suppose.
So what would be your advice to a new writer? Write to Nicola Schindler or...
No, the advice I always give new writers is keep writing.
Yeah.
It's one of the best bits of advice I was given was by Louise Page, who said, keep writing. Writing is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it'll get.
And what's with this treatments that people are asked to send in?
Treatments? They're just storylines. It's like...
No, but this is from new writers. They're not asked to write in a whole play or a script. They're just told to send in a treatment.
Yeah. Well, it's a paragraph that explains what your series is. It's something that sets out the stall of what your series is very succinctly.
But can that show somebody that person can write?
No, it shows you that there's a brilliant idea there,
right,
or not.
Okay.
Somebody told me a really brilliant story the other day. It was just so simple. It was just instantly thought, oh my God, I'd love to. Well, my first instinct was I'd love to write that.
Yeah.
But I suppose a producer's looking for something that makes them go, oh, I'd love to watch that. So a treatment is something that very quickly and simply sets out what the premise is.
And would they commission on the basis of that?
They might commission a script.
A script, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So writers can do that and get in that way.
Because it feels to me, from my angle, or mine and Judy's angle, that writers have become disempowered. And directors as well, yeah. See, now you go for an interview for something, and the person you're most likely to meet is the producer,
right?
Who's of no interest to me whatsoever. I'm not going to work with him.
Yeah.
He's not going to tell me how to act or improve anything I'm going to do, but he's got all the power. And so, one question to you is how much pressure do young writers still get to write to formula, to somebody else's ideas?
I think they probably get quite a lot because everybody wants to get a foot in the door, and you can't. You have to prove that you can tick boxes. I mean, I was lucky when I wrote things like Children's Ward and Coronation Street. I've always been able to imitate other writers' voices. So I could write like Kay Mellor. So I could write Playing the Field, and it would work because I could write like Kay Mellor. So I think you've got to. It's kind of showing a versatility. It's showing that you can do things. It's showing that you've got a facility to adapt and give them what they want, and then turn things into your own as well.
And when you say, keep writing...
Which is hard.
I mean, I don't know how many people here scribble, and, my mum used to say, I could write a book. And you'd always go, well, I don't know your story, I don't know that detail. So, I would imagine a fair few people here do scribble a bit. Poetry, songs, stories. Fine, keep writing. I know enough to know that that's true. But who do they show it to, and do they share it, and how do you share it? What's your advice on that level as to how you find out, get to the point where, like you got to, where somebody said, this is good, you can really do this? And Oh, great.
Well, it depends what you want from it. I think anybody who writes compulsively is a writer, whether they show it to people or make money out of it or not. If you have the compulsion to write, you will write.
But surely it's a compulsion to share, isn't it?
Well, Emily Bronte didn't think that. But, you know, everybody's different. Everybody does it for different reasons.
Right.
I always wanted to share. I always wanted to be a writer, and I wanted everybody to know that I was a writer. So along with the compulsion to write, I had the compulsion to go out knocking on doors and making a nuisance of myself and making people
Even though
read
you
what
were
I'd
shy?
written. Yeah, but I was never shy about that.
Not yet.
Right.
I was the first time I showed a script to anybody ever. It was my best friend at university, Wall, who knew nothing about literature. She was a mathematician. So I showed her this script and made her read it in front of me because I was so embarrassed about what her response would be. And she was brilliant, obviously. She was very kind about it. But after I'd got over that initial shock, and it is horrible, passing over a script or whatever and waiting for a response. But you've got to get beyond that. You've got to get to a stage where you hand things over and
listen to...
And it's like being an actor. I don't know how you do what you do. I don't know, you know, I think actors bear their hearts and souls much more than writers do because it's you, it's personal. And you know,
Okay.
you don't know what that response is going to be. And I think it's similar with the writer. You know, it's you and it's raw, and you're terrified what the response might be. But I don't, you know, I think it's much harder what you do.
What time is it now? One last question, which I hope is similar. When you wrote that monster that I played in...
Oh, yeah.
In Scott...
Joe Bevan.
Joe Bevan, yeah. Where'd you get that from? And at what point did you go, yeah, I've got his voice, yes, I understand him, this is what... I don't know whether you remember this character, but...
He was a serial killer.
Yeah, he knocked off 6 or 7 people and chopped them up and left the bits in the thingy bob. And, you know, I just assumed he was poorly. Well, that's right, because if you twirl a moustache and go, ha-ha, then there's nothing for the audience to do, but that's another thing. At what point did you know you'd got him, and where did you find him from, and how did you know what he thought?
I'd read a book about Fred West.
Oh, right.
It was meant to be like Fred, it was like Fred West, but he'd never been caught.
Right.
So that was the thinking behind that, which was gruesome. I hated writing.
It took ages to catch him.
I know. But it was... It was.
Fred West.
I used to find it really hard writing Scott and Bailey because you did get to a point of thinking, why the hell am I writing about these horrible people? It was quite, and it was weird to think that this is entertainment. I did find it quite difficult, but
you got through it, and at some point you must have gone, that's it, nailed it.
But I did find it. I found it quite
harrowing.
I used to get really. You get into quite dark places, right?
I know.
Like
Well,
I remember reading the book about Fred West and writing the story, and then when I finished, I went and put the book in the bin. I couldn't stand having it in the house.
Yeah.
And how long did that last?
Till I started writing Last Tango.
Yeah.
Hurrah!
And that made me feel very happy.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was literally like that. I remember writing the first bits of Last Tango and feeling like a weight had been lifted.
Yeah.
We have to stop now, don't we? Because you all need a drink and a wee. And so do we. Quarter of an hour. You've got quarter of an hour. Run downstairs and...
I just wanted to know about the casting process. I've read somewhere that you cast Sarah Lancashire's character kind of with her in mind. With the characters that you don't have an actor assigned to, what are you looking for in the casting process? Is it very obvious once they walk into the room? Yeah.
It varies. Sometimes it happens occasionally, but it's happened a number of times where somebody will walk into the room and it's immediately obvious from the moment they walk into the room that you're probably going to give them the part, which is wonderful. It's magic when that happens. That happened to me at the Sparkhouse when Richard Armitage walked into the room and the casting was John. Other than that, it's often been surprised by the way somebody reads something. I've spent the last 2 days casting in London for the Bronte film, and it's interesting to see what different people bring to the party with it sometimes. Sometimes it's just something as simple as they've actually learned the lines. Not just reading it off the page. Interestingly, with the Bronte project, everybody except one person has learned all the lines, which is a measure of how much they want it, I suppose, in some ways. I suppose essentially you're looking for that something else. You're looking for what else they're going to bring to it that you haven't brought to it. And it's a delight. It's a real pleasure for casting, auditioning people.
From an actor's point of view, you walk in the door.
Well, I'm very interested about.
You walk in the door and you can smell something. You've either got no chance, in which case you've got like 10-15 minutes to talk about that point of view, or you can smell straight away a minute. Now you've got 10 minutes not to bollocks it up. The best not ever woman, get out of there quick. Don't stay in there. Just, it is, but it's like, it is such a fascinating process. I've done it a couple of times from your point of view. And people do walk in the door and you go, no chance. And then they sit there for 10 minutes and you go, actually.
It's very
How did you get Derek Jacobi?
Derek was, it wasn't an obvious choice for me. We offered to a few people the part of Alan, and we turned it down. Pretty high profile people. And then one of
their names. They're mad.
And then one of the agents who looked after one of the people who turned it down also looked after Derek and said, have you ever thought about Derek Jacobi? And we just hadn't, because I just thought Derek did very high profile films and really posh theatre. And it's like we should be so lucky that Derek wanted to do it, and Derek did want to do it, so it was extraordinary. I mean, we were thrilled. I was sent to Leeds on the way over. It's the first time I've gone into a room knowing I was going to meet someone and thought, oh my God. And shaking his hand and saying, hi. You're Derek, you're coming. And although being in the room with someone like that would be I haven't even paid to be here, No, Derek really wanted to do it. He wanted to play the kind of person he'd never played before. He used to play kings and princes and archbishops. And he wanted to play an ordinary man. And it was wonderful chemistry. The chemistry between him and Annie on screen is just extraordinary. I think that's what's made the show. That and the chemistry between Sarah and Nicola, they're wonderful together as well.
Go ahead.
Could I just ask about James Norton, as he has appeared as Lord Chapter, a homosexual in the squares, and is a really, really bad guy. Is he about to be about in the next series of Happy Back, or just incarcerated?
I got into trouble it was at the BAFTAs for revealing that, well, everybody knows now, yeah, he is in the next scene. And he's going, I can't. He's a psychopath. He's in prison, but it's very interesting. You need to watch it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I've already had one.
All right.
Can I ask a question? I'm a member of the Halifax Thespians. I used to go to Salisbury Grammar School, although it was a long time.
I'm just going to write about Halifax Thespians.
Before you.
And a new series of Lost Angle.
If you could get the funding.
Judy is going to join the Halifax.
Are you wicked?
Okay.
Hence, series 4 opening with Caroline saying, a handbag.
We are not a posh theatre, we are a very local theatre, but if we could get the funding, and I know there are various industrial tycoons in here, would you be prepared to write a play for us?
Wow.
A stage play?
I asked her that question
Yes.
at the read-through for Happy Valley, because I'd just come back from Glasgow where I was working with the best director I've ever worked with, and I just walked up to Sally and said, when are you going to write a play? And she went, I'd love to, I haven't got the time. I'm with her. I think you should make the time.
I think you should do it.
You know.
I think you should do it for our local community. It would be an absolutely fantastic thing for you to do, and we'd love it.
I think you should do it for yourself, but I think you should try it. I'd just love to know, because you're such a good storyteller, what I'd really want to know is, if you were to write a play, how different would you approach it than, I mean, obviously, technically you would, because you wouldn't have to write to 45 minutes, formulas and things, but would you still have the same seed of going, that's the right story?
Yes. I think writing for theatre is such a different discipline from writing for screen. I think it's as different as it is writing a novel is different from writing poetry. And it's something I've always wanted to do. I started off wanting to write for theatre, and I still do. I still have this massive passion to write something for stage, and I'm going to, and I will. But for me, it's writing for actors. I won't be writing for you, I'll be writing for him. For me, was that my chest? I like writing for actors, and I will write a stage play, and by all means put it on. But I love writing for specific actors, and I think, writing a stage play is a very different discipline to writing TV. It's about writing very sustained, long scenes that develop in a very different way to telly, which is, we can cut and cut and cut in telly. On really clever stage plays, they don't do that. They pack the macrocosm into the microcosm. They say a lot in a very succinct period of time. Proper stage plays. But it's something I would love to do. It's something I'd love to learn the discipline of doing, and I will one day, and I'll be writing it for you.
Hurrah! Good. Hold you to that. You all.
Can I just ask a question from the back up the top here?
Go ahead.
Here. Sally, you spoke a moment ago about the 2-to-1 ratio between women and men in British television. And not only have you written very strong female characters, but also you have written very strong lesbian characters as well, that are not peripheral characters, they're main characters, for which many of us are very grateful to have that kind of representation on our TV screens in something that's not tagged as LGB drama. Was that deliberate? Did you sit down one day and go, do you know what I'm going to write today, and I'm going to make a lesbian a main character? Or did it just happen? And have you ever been discouraged or encouraged to about that by the exec producers and people like that? Because from At Home with the Braithwaites, etc., we've had these really strong characters.
No, I've never sat down and deliberately thought, oh, I'll turn this character into a gay character. They've always just been spontaneously there, because they're heroic. People who live on the periphery of society are always heroic, so they immediately then lend themselves to good drama. And no, I've never found any resistance either. People always massively embrace it, massively embrace wanting to play those characters, massively embrace wanting to dramatise those characters. I think that's really exciting. That it's interesting that on telly we can do things and we can portray things, and it makes a difference to the way people are perceived. It is different to the daily trials that people have to confront sometimes. If you put it on telly and you turn it into very real drama, people see it in a very different way to the way they do in real life. It's really exciting. I've had so many letters from gay women. Sarah's had millions more than me, but I've had a lot. They just write to you and they thank you, and they're so kind and generous, and you feel like you've done something really useful and interesting. And I'm just feeling really bad now that I've killed Kate off.
And Anne Lister's gay.
Oh, she was, yeah, well gay.
I don't know anything about Anne Lister.
Do you not?
No, nothing.
She was brilliant, Anne Lister, because she was a very complex character, and if you measure her by today's standards, she wasn't a very nice person either. She was very predatory. But she really ploughed her own furrow. She didn't...
What was her profession?
She was a landowner. She owned Shibden Hall above Halifax up here.
Right.
And she wasn't an aristocrat. She was kind of yeomanry. She inherited Shibden. She wangled her way into it. She shouldn't have inherited Shibden. Her father should. But she managed to persuade her uncle that she really needed to leave it to her because her dad wouldn't know what to do with it. She was very manipulative. She was very clever. She was fantastic. She was so many things. She was a scholar. She was a traveller. She was a fabulous diarist. Pepys is famous for writing a fraction of what Anne Lister wrote. Halifax really needs to celebrate Anne Lister more than it does.
Well,
And it will. We're going to, do big things.
Maybe that's your play for your local.
what time is it now, please? 10 past 10. We're going to some last questions here. Yes, go ahead. Night.
You said that you write a lot for actors. You also write a lot for the Calder Valley. Mm-hmm. In fact, by the time you've done the Haworth play, the Lister play, that will be 4 really big projects set here. Mm. Do you think, is that accidental? Is that because you are connected to this area? Or do you think that Calderdale has something to offer?
I think it's to do with my own... we were talking earlier about characters, and all your characters are you. All your characters come from you. The bits of everything you've ever known or inherited or seen, and intrinsically what's in you. And I think the older I've got, I have ended up writing stuff set here. And I don't really know why. I went to live in London when I was about 22. I now live in Oxfordshire, and I love Oxfordshire. But I'm drawn to being back up here. And I think there's a power in writing about a very specific, particular part of the world, like Hardy did. That it makes it real. If you can write about, like in that clip where we're talking about the funeral being in Elland tomorrow, that feels very real to me. Talking about, something being in Halifax, or Sorby Bridge, or Hebden Bridge, it just makes it real. And if I feel it's real, I hope the audience will as well. And I think that's very powerful. It makes all the best recent... Think about something like Breaking Bad. It's not generic America. It's a very particular part of America. It's New Mexico. It's on the... it's that desert land.
Santa Fe.
It's not what we think of as generic America. It's a very distinctive look and feel. And I think when you write and make it very specific to a particular area, it just has a massive impact in its own right. And I'm lucky. I come from around here, and not only is it a very particular part of the world, it looks stunning on telly. It looks amazing on telly. I was going out with my DOP, Ivan, who's our director of photography, who's from South Africa, and he works in Los Angeles all the time. He lives in Los Angeles, and he comes over to film for us. And all the time he's going, let's film this, let's film that, look at that, that's amazing. Let's film it from this angle. And I'm going, it looks really nice from over there as well. And, you could swing a camera around in the Calder Valley and it looks fucking brilliant.
One more. Go ahead, Diane.
You obviously delight in directing, and now you can do that with your own work. And is it really tough when you have to relinquish that degree of control?
Tough.
Did anybody hear any of that? No. One more time, darling.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Did you?
I can. She asked me if it was really tough to relinquish control to other directors.
On the episodes that you direct.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It
Here's
must be a
it.
nightmare.
I've just handed over the second block of Happy Valley to Nyasa Hardiman, who's a very talented Irish director.
Lovely.
And I hate her. No, I love her. She's great. She's great. Yes, she'll do a really good job. But yeah, I wish I was doing it myself. No, it is hard because
Must be.
but you know, when you're in the hands of a really good director though as well, like Niessa, and she will be fantastic. It's delightful because I want to learn. I want to learn as a director, and I'm only going to learn from watching other directors as well.
Are you doing the last two as yet, as well as the first two?
Yes, I am. So, yeah.
What director would you aspire to be like?
Well, Eros, who directed the first.
Who? Sorry.
Eros Lynn, who directed the first block of the first series of Happy Valley, and he's directed the first block of series 1 and 2 of Last Tango.
Right.
He's just a good all-rounder, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, from my point of view, you have one enormous advantage, which is, you know, the actors just go, oh, you liked that, did you? Fine, right. Well, it's, you know, it's an enormous power that Euros doesn't have, he can't have. But the first episode you directed, the first scene that I did with you, and you went, no, I think that's really good. Well, I can't tell you what that sounds like. Print.
But I love it. I love directing. You don't know what a thrill it is, that scene with you and Charlie sitting on the bed. Mm-hmm. Just to be in that room and to be the first person who sees those performances.
Oh, well.
And to be the person who goes up to you and says, that was brilliant, but that line there, can you do that with it? To be the person who is there in the room, in the moment with you, these two extraordinarily talented people. I love that. And he's surrounded by other extraordinary talented people like Ivan. Everybody who's there just works so hard to get it right, don't they? It's just a real thrill being there.
It is, you're right, yeah. So has this been.